I like a lot of you. I love a lot of you, but I like a lot of you. Often when I hear that Trump is complaining about lawfare, where he's being attacked, I go, yeah, but didn't he actually commit a couple of these crimes after he left office? Like when he could have just not, like the classified documents case, like that one. If you're not committing a secondary crime, which is, of course, planning on or in the act of selling those secrets to our enemies, then you could just give them back. Right? Thank you, Aaron. Right? Couldn't you? By the way, hit that like, subscribe. And if you're on Facebook, give me a scowl emoji. Frown. Oh. I'm often confused by the fact that he could have just stopped a crimin'. Yeah? And apparently not. And thank God, Megyn Kelly went on the All-In podcast, I think is what it was. The All-In Summit. So she got to be there in person. In case you don't know, it's like these 4 rich assholes put together this All-In podcast that they do. Trump was on there, and that it was one of the most embarrassing podcasts he's ever fucking done. And every single one of them were like grinding their teeth and covered in flop sweat by the end. Like you could just tell they were like, holy fuck, we're backing this guy. And the only upside was he was on the call via Zoom. They weren't in the room with him, right? They were like, at least nobody's got a picture of us together after this shit. Well, obviously Megyn Kelly gets special treatment. So she's at this thing dressed all in white. Goes case by case. She goes case by case on all of these cases, and it only takes her 4 minutes and 10 seconds, everybody. So gather round. This is going to be cleared right the fuck up.
With family members, in the, that are cops, how you look at the other cases, and if you think there's any validity to them. Because there are 5 cases we're talking about. He's guilty of the first 3 so far out of 3. Some of them feel trumped up. But what about the last 2? The documents and the January 6th one. Do you think there's any validity to them?
No validity. The only thing that Trump...
no validity to the January 6th case or the documents case. This I can't wait to hear. Okay, apparently, by the way, the other 2, they're giving a wash.
Was potentially in trouble on, and the thing I hit him on when we interviewed was not turning over the documents once he had a subpoena.
Which would have been so easy to do.
Yes, but...
Right, if you're not an asshole or a traitor. That's the 2 things. And if you're an asshole traitor, I got to say, I think, maybe that's Trump's essential problem.
Which was dumb, but he's Trump.
He should have turned him over.
He always does self-destructive stuff.
But that one's gone away now, too, because of...
No, it has not.
Jack Smith not being properly appointed down there. But
No, you can't go, that's gone away because he wasn't properly appointed. That doesn't mean he didn't commit the fucking crime, lady. And they're just going to recuse Judge Cannon and get back on track. There's absolutely every right to have a special counsel. It's just fucking stupid. And again, she's like, you can tell she's turning away from it. She wants to talk to something that he said or whatever, but way to fucking ignore it. And by the way, the rest of these assholes know that. They know better. None of them would think that a case was over if a special counsel was denied in a case they got called up on.
In answer to your question on Judge Merchan, I think he almost is in a position where he might have to sentence him to jail, given how big they've tried to.
And because Alan Weisselberg and Michael Cohen went to jail.
Make it, you stole an election.
What? No. Has nothing to do with a stolen election on that one. That was just fucking run-of-the-mill long-term fraud, dummy.
It would be at a suspended sentence. It would be immediately appealed. And I think Trump on appeal will win.
Maybe, but he's going to spend at least 72 hours in fucking jail because they're going to walk him the fuck out of there.
Many holes in that case, so I don't think Trump will ever do one single day in jail.
So, Megyn, if...
Whoa. There were not a bunch of holes in that case. He was found guilty by a jury of 34 fucking counts. There's not holes in the count. There's no reason why he wouldn't get jail time if Alan Weisselberg and Michael Cohen got time. Why is he fucking special? Because he used to be fucking president? Because he He told them what to do. They're following his orders. They go to jail, but he gets to walk because that's justice? Get the fuck out of here.
We look at the 5 cases, 6 months from now, a year from now. Let's assume all 5 of them go to trial. He's guilty of 3 so far.
Wait, what do you mean he's guilty of 3 so far?
Well, he's been convicted of 3, sorry.
What do you mean? No, he hasn't.
I love this.
Megyn Carroll was guilty.
That was not a conviction. That was a civil case.
Okay, well, yes, so that's what I'm talking about. So that
Okay, but there's a big difference.
It's still, he was convicted. He was guilty of that. He got a settlement.
I don't know why you're applauding. He was found an adjudicated rapist in that case. I don't know why anyone celebrates that case at all. And again, you're dunking on this guy explaining that he's been, that he was found liable, not guilty.
In the Trump organization, they're guilty there.
That, again, was still civil, liable.
Yes, of course. But these are the cases we're talking about. And in the third one...
she's a lawyer, right?
Yeah, of course. And in the third one, I'm just talking about...
No, she's not. She's not a practicing lawyer. And certainly not on any of these fucking things. When's the last time she ever worked on any elements of a case? Especially stuff like that involves classified documents. And again, the closest she's come to a case like any of the cases that Trump is up against is the E. Jean Carroll case, where she was in the E. Jean Carroll position when it came to Fox News. That's kind of what is the grossest thing about Megyn Kelly.
At the 5 cases, yes, some are civil, obviously, and some are not. Some are criminal. But if we look at all 5 cases...
You said 3 convictions. Now you're walking it back.
I'm not walking it back. There's 3 in which he was...
You should walk it back.
Okay,
I'm
guys,
so glad Megyn is here.
Of the 5, 3 of them he's either guilty or...
You got a bad result.
Yeah, got a bad result. There are 2 more. If he is found guilty of those 2 more, Megyn, and 5 of 5, he had a bad result. Way to frame it. Will you chalk all 5 up in your mind to 5 different jurisdictions, 5 different prosecutors, 5 different juries and or judges, all conspiring to get him?
100%.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to hear your answer to. 5 of 5 different jurisdictions. Yeah. You think it's all lawfare?
E. Jean Carroll, they changed the law so that she could bring a civil lawsuit against him.
Whoa. They changed the law so that victims of rape could bring charges across the board. It has that change. It was affected by Weinstein, Bill Cosby. It's the fact that Trump's a rapist that he found himself in this position. And if he'd have just shut his fucking trap, he could have like paid her off at some point with the original $5 million. Never spoke of her again.
And she did. New York went 87% for Joe Biden. That fix was in right from the start. The fraud trial that Letitia James brought against him has never been brought. There's no victims. The banks who were involved said, we didn't lose a penny. What are we doing?
The reason they didn't lose a penny is because they were engaged in massive money laundering for the Russians. That's why. There's a secondary case where Deutsche Bank has been fined by the United States government for money laundering, and a lot of it had to do with the money that he got from them. They didn't have to get upset about losing money because and by the way, everybody did not get fucking paid back. As a matter of fact, his lender on Trump Tower Chicago had to forgive $240 million worth of loans to him, where he sued them for predatory lending because it wasn't their money. And rather than have the SEC and federal investigators digging around in their fucking books to find out where the money that they loaned him in the first place came from, because he had him over a barrel because they were both engaged in criminality, they just took it as a wash.
Doing here, we weren't damaged. Nobody was complaining except Tish James, who ran for office saying, I will get him. Then you have Alvin Bragg, who's a George Soros.
What? And she won. Also, do you think Trump was just an angel the rest of the time? You might factor in, is there a reason why New York hates this motherfucker? They like gangsters more than they like this dipshit, largely because he would show up at charities he did not donate to, bully his way onto the fucking stage, and sit on the dais like he was one of their biggest benefactors, eat the food, drink the drink, and then walk out of the fucking place, not contributing at all. And then his dope-ass son steals from St. Jude's. None of the Trumps can run a goddamn charity in the state of New York. What the fuck kind of scumbag do you have to be where you can't be trusted to run a charity? Because they're like, I don't care what the fuck the cause is, these motherfuckers will steal from them. Whoever it is. Kids with cancer, fucking weepy-eyed pets, it doesn't matter. This asshole, whether it's the ASPCA, St. Jude's, or it's fucking veterans, they'll steal from them. No, you can't do it in our state anymore. Oh, and by the way, this is, you want to see the big fucking tell, Megyn? You want to see the big fucking tell? Have the Trumps opened up a charity in any other state? Think about that for a fucking second. And think about why nobody's brought this up until I just did. Think about that. New York says you can't do it. We find you guilty of stealing from these other these charities, and you cannot run a charity or work on a charity in the state anymore because we do not trust you not to steal from kids with cancer and veterans and all this stuff. Not ever again. And do the Trumps go, hey, fuck you, that's not what we did. I'm going to move my charity to Florida, or I'm going to move it to fucking Montana. I'm going to run this thing out of Chicago or wherever else I have a property, and you're going to see we're going to raise a ton of money for that. No, they just fucking packed it up and said, fuck them anyways. Zero charity work from that point on, from the whole fucking family. Who does that? Who does that? Who says basically, all right, New York, you caught us, and then we never liked charity in the first place. Fuck them. Right? Is anybody aware of another Trump charity? Did they? I'll tell you this. Not only did they not open another charity in another fucking state to prove New York wrong, nor would another state more than likely allow them to do it. They don't even donate space at his property to raise money for stuff. That this part of the St. Jude's scam was that Eric they'd go, yeah, we're going to do this big donation thing. St. Jude's will run your charity out of our space, but we're going to, the people who donate is going to go to pay for the facility. The Trump properties aren't donating that, the event space that night because it's Eric's fucking charity, which you'd think would be an obvious thing, right? Wouldn't you imagine? What the fuck? Okay, so Eric Trump is going to do this thing for St. Jude's. Allegedly, he gives a shit. Now, we know that he was skimming and it was a big scam, but you'd think at least because he's a Trump and it's the Trump family and the Trump family is billionaires and they own all these properties, that when you hold a St. Jude's event at Bedminster or Mar-a-Lago or any of these fucking golf places, that they would donate, or at least, donate up to cost. Let's say you have to pay your staff. You go, I'm going to pay our staff tonight and we're going to write that off as a charity thing to the charity, right? That would be the absolute top line. We're going to donate the space. We'll pay for the staff, and that will be our donation to the project as well as whatever's raised. How fucking hard would that be? For real. I mean, just the fucking free press alone would be worth more than you could get dollar for dollar. And yet they still wouldn't fucking do it. They still wouldn't fucking do it. They'd still skim right off the top. And this fucking moron who had a similar experience at Fox News that Megyn Carroll had with Donald Trump, who basically Trump accused her when she dared to talk back of bleeding from her crotch, being on her period, because that's the worth of a woman to this motherfucker. Her thing is, this is all trumped up. Dude never did anything wrong. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Soros-funded prosecutor who doesn't like to prosecute any crime in New York City, where I lived for 17 years.
Bullshit.
Except if your name is Donald Trump. Let's go down to Georgia.
All right, now she's just quoting him. Also, I would like to say that Alan Weisselberg and Michael Cohen also don't have the last name Trump.
Or Fannie Willis and
or the first name Donald.
Nathan Wade couldn't keep their libidos in check long enough to actually bring this case against Donald Trump. It's a repeat of what was happening in January 6th up in the case with Judge Chutkan, who loathes Trump and has sentenced almost every J6 defendant to way more jail time than their counterparts would get.
Their counterparts what? What do you mean counterparts? Other people who beat police officers with flagpoles? Other people who build gallows on public property?
Those are falling apart because of presidential immunity, which was handed down by the Supreme Court, who said you cannot bring a criminal case against a sitting president for any official act. Those cases have been...
Right, and election interference is not an official act. Trying to bend the election to stay in power is not an official act. What he's hoping is that they can... that it has to go through an impeachment process first, so that they have to establish motive through an impeachment process. And if they don't do that, the court's going to assume that you're not even allowed to ask what he was thinking during that period of time. That's why. So that you can't establish motive, therefore you can't establish guilt, which is bullshit, because you can establish motive from the people around him, and the motive is obvious. He's said it ever since. He's trying to stay in power.
And gutted. Also a Supreme Court ruling saying the same on January 6 defendants in general. And that leaves us with Florida and the documents. And Trump has torn that apart because Jack Smith wasn't properly appointed and isn't the right counsel. But there are other issues. They haven't even gotten to presidential immunity there. And so...
You don't have presidential immunity after you're no longer president, dipshit. Even if there was this idea he had the right to take those things when he was president, he doesn't get to keep them. The Presidential Records Act means that he doesn't get to keep them. It was written about fucking Nixon. Jesus Christ.
That one's going nowhere as well. And by the way, they're going to appeal it.
No, it is. It's the worst.
Up to the 11th Circuit. She just threw it out. The 11th Circuit is conservative, and thank God so is the current Supreme Court. They're not going to tolerate that nonsense.
Let me ask you about...
Also, is this an AI-generated audience?
I think...
Let me just ask you...
Sorry, I was just overwhelmed by the diversity.
I think J. Cal just lost his right to ever bring up lawfare again.
That would be the other guy.
With democracy.
Sorry, that was the guy who was asking questions or whatever. Good Lord. Like, talk about being all in for this motherfucker. And Megyn Kelly, of all people, should know better. But seemingly she is incapable of processing just how awful her take on this is. She just literally, and it's super weird. I don't get it.